Previously on Not an Audio Review Channel. This is the Amp Camp Preamp Plus Headphone Amp, or ACP Plus. And here's the harmonic distortion of the ACP Plus. As you can see, at the standard measurement level, the second order distortion is at about 1%, just as Papa Pass promised. The ACP Plus just sounds a little hazy. Everything I'm about to say with the fact that I built this myself, and anything about its sound may be the fault of the way I built it because I barely know what I'm doing, and I have no way of knowing without having another ACP Plus here. This is a clone of the musical Fidelity X10D tube buffer. This goes right in here. It's not coloring your music so much as tweaking it a little bit. You're just getting scammed. I have this Apple dongle hooked up to a pair of tin cans, and I can EQ that to a perfect Harman target. Anything more than that is a ripoff. Didn't you see this video that Amir made about... Get out of here. Go away. Stop gaslighting me already. Nobody asked you. It's too bad I had a monkey puppet and not a sea lion one. Anyway, if you like watching me beat my monkey on camera, be sure to subscribe and like the video. So after I posted my video about my Amp Camp Preamp Plus headphone amp, that's this guy right here, folks on the DIY audio forum said that my distortion measurements weren't right and didn't match other people's measurements. So after a lot of testing with a multimeter and putting pictures up on the forum, it became clear that some of the resistors had been burnt out. I'm not sure exactly why, but I also had a capacitor in the same spot explode twice and need to be replaced, which I think was due to a short caused by the way I had the power inlet shoved against the screw terminal, and maybe that had burnt out the resistors as well. So I replaced the resistors and also removed the screw terminal and soldered the wires directly to the board. And once I'd done that, the distortion dropped dramatically. Like you can see, while it's still a bit higher than my Aune S17 Pro, it's much closer to normal looking. It does have a rise in second order harmonic distortion that's probably intentional and makes it sound a little more tube-like. But that distortion is now down to about 81 dB below the fundamental, or 0.0087%, far less than the 41 dB or 0.465% I get from my actual tube amp, the Xduoo TA84. And the rest of the harmonic distortion is so low as to basically be inaudible, lower than 100 decibels. And now the unit sounded so good that I got excited and wanted to upgrade a little more. So I ordered some slightly higher quality parts. I put a nicer IEC connector in the power supply, nicer flip switches for both the units, a nicer input switch, and a nicer input switch and the headphone jack. You can see the headphone jack now is actually can have the little screw in the top, so it looks normal. That's good. I also removed all the screw terminals and took out the resistors that I'd added to increase the output impedance of the headphone jack, just so I could hear it in its standard state. And I left out the second set of preamp inputs for now, because I stopped using the iLoud micros for the moment and I don't need them, and it made things simpler. I can always put them back later if I want to. It's not hard since I've already made the holes, which now just give a little bit of extra ventilation. Now obviously I don't have the previous version of the ACP Plus on hand to A/B test the difference in sound. So keep that in mind when I'm talking about how the sound changed and that I'm speaking entirely from memory. So how does it sound now? It sounds amazing. I mean, honestly, I regret that video probably gave a lot of people the wrong idea about the unit when it sounded the way it did because I'd broken it. But I need to qualify that greatness in a number of ways. Because while it clearly sounds great, I really went back and forth a lot on whether the kind of great it sounds is the kind of great that I like. So it sounds big and natural, like there's stage and there's an organicness to it. And it is slam and energy for days, but not so much as to be a fatiguing like I found the Ferrum Oor could be. And I wouldn't say it sounds fuzzy anymore, but it does have this sharp leading edge. A lot of people like a sharper leading edge. In fact, I think of it as part of the hi-fi sound that you get from a lot of expensive gear, but it's not usually what I go for. I find too sharp a leading edge can sound grating, fatiguing, harsh, sometimes headache-inducing. This isn't that bad. It's not really harsh or headache-inducing at all. And like, it gives a little bit of extra grit to the sound, which can actually sound good. particularly with rock music, and make things like distorted guitars sound hard like they should and realistic. But yeah, it's not usually the kind of sound that I go for. And on top of that, the ACP Plus, despite its elevated second order harmonic distortion, sounds kind of dry, kind of, I don't know, crispy. And so I thought, much like with the ZMF Pendant, this is really good, but it's not for me, and that was it. Time to put it away again. But in the interest of completeness, I thought, well, I might as well try it with my X10D tube buffer, which I talked about in the harmonic distortion video. So this is a clone I made of a tube buffer made by Musical Fidelity in the 90s. It doesn't do any voltage amplification, but it puts the signal through a pair of ECC88 tubes and gives it a bit of tube flavor. Musical Fidelity does have a new version of this called the Xtube that retails for $500 and has that frankly awesome cylindrical case. But circuit boards to make a clone of the old one are widely available, and it's not hard to make or super expensive as these things go. Now, paired with the S17 Pro, this is getting crowded, I don't feel like the X10D makes a big difference. It sounds a little bit more spacious and ethereal, but honestly, it's so subtle it can be hard to notice. The X10D did help out the too clean sound of the Ferrum Oor for me, but again, the difference wasn't huge. But I hooked the X10D up to the ACP Plus and was like, what the fuck? Because this sanded off those leading edges just a bit and made the whole thing sound less dry, a bit more wet and liquid and deeper and more natural and organic. Like its synergy. For my taste at least, the X10D placed between the DAC and the ACP Plus gives the ACP Plus exactly what it needs. I also think the Mystery DAC made it sound better, and I promise that review is next. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll talk more about that synergy there. Now, the S17 Pro is still much more laid back than this. This amp rocks. It's just got energy and slam and sounds alive, so rock music is killer on it, as I said. But while it sounds great on the HD6XX, I still don't think I like that combo as much as with the Xduoo TA84 or the S17 Pro. I think those amps both bring out more of the mid-range magic of the HD6XX, while the leading edge of the ACP Plus kind of covers it up and obscures it, I guess you might say. The HD660S2, though, are a completely different story. These still take to this thing like sushi to rice. It's just amazing. But to my surprise, the real winner was the ZMF Atrium, which seems to crave the grip and authority that this amp offers. While it softens the leading edge just a bit and the mid-range is preserved, I think because the Atrium is just less sensitive to sources than the HD6XX and retains more of its own character. Honestly, I never thought the TA84 or the S17 Pro were quite as good with the Atrium as the ZMF Pendant was. Like, they don't have the grunt or something that the Atrium wants, but the Pendant has that third order harmonic or whatever sound that I couldn't get past. With the ACP Plus, on the other hand, this sounds perfect to me. Compared to the TA84, the ACP Plus seems to have more energy and most of all more detail, especially in the treble, which can feel a little unrefined on the TA84. And of course, this doesn't have the drawbacks of the TA84 that I mentioned before. It works great with low impedance headphones, it doesn't take a long time to start up, even with the X10D, and it doesn't have the noise floor or occasional channel imbalance that I've experienced with the TA84. And then, because I'm me, I was like, why am I using this cheap power supply with the X10D? And I got some parts to build my own. Now the thing about the X10D is that it takes 12 volt AC input, not DC. It does the AC to DC conversion and regulation internally, which means all you really need for a power supply is a transformer to step down the voltage from the wall, 120 volts in my case, to 12 volts. So I got this nice Antec toroidal transformer, and I had this EMF filter lying around, so I threw that in as well. I'm not sure how big a difference it makes, but it's supposed to be good, and I had room for it in this chassis that I had lying around from another project and got for cheap off eBay, which has the key feature of already having the IC inlet hole cut out, because those things are a pain to do yourself, let me tell you. So I really just had to make the hole for the GX16 connector here. Best practice would probably be to also put a power switch on this thing so the transformer isn't sucking a little bit of power when it's off. But, I mean, the wall wart doesn't have a power switch, so that can't matter that much, can it? Please tell me in the comments how wrong I am here. Pretty simple, and it works great, and it really did improve the sound, making it sound just that little bit smoother and cleaner. No, it didn't. Oh, don't you start. Would I go through all this effort if it didn't make a difference? Of course you would. You're an obsessive weirdo. Look, you can measure the difference in different power supplies and things like ripple and mains leakage. Yeah, but you can't hear it. I can hear it. I just told you I can. Who knows more about what I hear than me? Listen, I know exactly how you hear. You do? Of course I do. I'm just a puppet on your hand that you're pretending to have a conversation with because you're a weirdo. All right, that's enough out of you. Ow, ow, help! I'm being oppressed! Free speech! In fact, one thing I totally forgot to do in the last video was talk about the differences between the different power supplies on the ACP Plus, which is especially dumb since I spent the whole first part of that video talking about power supplies and how I made my own to replace the stock one. But yeah, the short version is that the custom power supply just sounds cleaner and clearer and smoother and more refined pretty much across the board, though the difference isn't enormous. But it's enough that I'd recommend it. And to make matters worse or better for all you builders out there, depending on your perspective, now I also recommend people make an X10D to go with this thing because, at least to my taste, it kind of completes the sound. The wildest thing to me here is actually the distortion measurements. So this is the ACP Plus harmonic distortion you saw before. And this is the ACP Plus with the tube buffer in place. As you can see, while the third order distortion is higher, the second order is lower, like a lot lower. 0.0026% versus 0.0088%, like a third as much, and the overall THD is much lower as a result. In fact, the overall distortion of the ACP Plus and the X10D together is now lower than the distortion on the S17 Pro. Why? I assume it has something to do with the input and output impedance of the X10D and the way it acts as a current amplifier but not a voltage amplifier, but honestly, I have no idea. Maybe there's something to the idea that tube sound isn't the result of tubes just adding harmonic distortion. The thing is, the ACP Plus still has this leading edge attack that both the S17 Pro and the TA84 don't have, and that isn't usually the thing I go for, even though a lot of people really love it. But I think this might be making me come around to it. It sounds so good, and after you listen to something for a while, it starts sounding normal to you. I don't know, sometimes I go back to the TA84 or the S17 Pro. It's nice to have different flavors sometimes. The ACP Plus may not have quite the tubey goodness of the TA84, but it gets some of it both because of its own distortion profile and what adding the X10D does for it. It really sounds like a great tube amp to me, even though with the X10D you can think of it as a hybrid. In fact, you could probably make a killer hybrid if you wanted to by sticking the X10D and the ACP Plus boards in the same chassis. That could be a fun project. And I'd take this over a lot of much more expensive amplifiers, like the Ferrum Oor I reviewed last video, for example. This doesn't have the insanely black background and super sharp detail of the Oor, but I don't really want it to. Also, paired with my Parasound A23 Plus power amp and Q Acoustic Concept 30 speakers, yeah, this sounds incredible. Alright, I hope you liked that video. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, or don't. I'm not the boss of you. See you next time where I unveil the Mystery DAC, which is another case of the endgame I never knew I needed. Take care.